Greetings and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration.
Every moment in your life is filled with all the opportunities that life has to offer.
My name is Stephanie Wilson-Coleman.
You see, life is a canvas, and you decide to color. What colors will you choose for your life today?
Listen to the words of the song. Everything gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be.
Greetings and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration. I'm Stephanie Wilson-Coleman, the Empowerment Doctor, and I am your host for A Sip of Inspiration. Tonight's show will deal with gun violence. As a matter of fact, we've titled it Gun Violence, Chicago Under Fire. In 2012, Chicago police seized more than 7,400 guns. That's about 3 times more than officers in New York City. And in 2012, 513 homicides were attributed to gun violence. In the first 3+ weeks of this year, police seized 450 guns in Chicago compared to 99 in New York City. You see, I believe that we don't talk about the things that are killing us. We don't talk about sex, and we don't talk about gun violence. Tonight will be different, where we will have a frank conversation about gun violence. Joining me tonight to make sure that we have that frank conversation is my first guest, Ameena Matthews. Ameena Matthews is a reformed woman from a checkered past. Her father is Jeff Ford, a notorious Chicago gang leader, and she herself was involved with a drug ring. After finding love, children, and faith in her Muslim family, Ameena joined the Chicago group of gang violence interrupters, which is known as Ceasefire, now known as Cure Violence, and taking violence protection to the street, literally. I want to thank you, Ameena, for joining us tonight. Joining Ameena is Marshaun Bacon. Marshaun Bacon is with Youth Guidance, and he's a B.A.M counselor, and B.A.M stands for Becoming a Man. He encourages his students to recognize the need for positive role models and how they can lead to positive emotions and academic success. You see, Youth Guidance B.A.M is a sports edition. Youth Guidance Band Sports Edition is a school-based counseling, mentoring, violence prevention, and educational enrichment program that promises social, emotional, and behavior competencies for at-risk male youth. The wonderful thing about B.A.M, I pulled some statistics, which I'm going to go to my paper because people are always saying it can't be done. Results of a study released in 2012 show that B.A.M works is cost effective. This program alone, the participants saw a 10% increase in graduation rates, a reduction in failing grades by 37%, and a decrease in violent crime arrest by 44%, all at a cost of $1,100 per participant. The crime lab estimates the social benefit cost ratio for this program to be at least 3 to 1 per participating youth. I say we've stumbled up on a solution.
That's wonderful.
It's wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you, Marshaun, for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, and you be a great spokesperson for us, so, for all the statistics.
Now, those who know me know that I believe that problems can only be solved when you figure out how to combine art, technology, history, science, and spirituality. So helping us with the spirituality piece is Reverend Gwindol Tate. Reverend Tate, better known as Dr. R.I.S.E, believes in helping people reach their potential through motivation. R.I.S.E stands for his motto, which is realizing individual success through education. Dr. R.I.S.E is a national renowned motivational speaker, trainer, consultant, poet, and author. He teaches people how to overcome the challenges caused by a lack of motivation. He is also the minister and founder of the R.I.S.E Ministry. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
Again.
Always, always. Yes.
Now that we've got that part out of the way, I want to thank you all for joining me. And I want to start first off by dispelling some myths. If you read the paper and listen to the news, the only city in America that's having a gun violence problem is Chicago.
Chicago.
Is that true?
It would seem so, wouldn't it?
It seems, as Rev said, it seems that way, but it's not. It's a nation's problem. The riveting numbers of our youth our young youth dying is unacceptable, and it's stagnating. But we're not the only city that struggles with the issue of losing our youth.
Nor are we even the only nation. This is a global issue in terms of our acceptance of violence as a way of life or as an alternative to conflict resolution. So I think what you see in Chicago is a microcosm that's, you know, really speaking to a larger issue.
So it's really a public health issue now,
is.
as opposed to
become
just
one.
an isolated issue that occurs in certain sections of town in Chicago.
Yes.
Now, what are some of the symptoms or some of the reasons do you think that we have so much violence just not only in Chicago but throughout the world?
Well,
Go ahead.
are you're asking
Yeah,
all of us?
all of you are.
It's a multifaceted reason of why violence is the end result.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of symptoms inside of, as we look at it as an epidemic, as a public health model, that as a violence interrupter, my job is to stop the transmission of violence from one person to another. And that means I don't get in the middle of, you know, if there is someone with gunplay or I break up a fight. Well, yes, I do, but it's not that is the main thing. What I do is the same thing that we do collectively together, is talk about the circumstances and situations. We have young guys that are 17, 18 years old that are reading at second and third grade levels. We have young women that at all do not know how to take care of themselves as a woman, especially when they become into their womanhood.
Okay.
We have young families that, young men and women that are being raised by young grandmothers that are, and then we also are looking at first and second generation of PTS, post-traumatic syndrome, of young men and women that are missed or not diagnosed at all as heroin, crack cocaine, or alcohol syndrome children. So therefore, they're just in classrooms or kicked out of schools because they have been in classrooms and wreaked havoc for so many months that they're kicked out of school and they're left to be at the corner grocery store or in front of my house as I pay my mortgage as they're doing what they do, which is nothing. So there's a multifaceted of issues that, Stephanie, that's inside of the heart, mind, and souls of our young guys and girls before they pull that trigger.
But you know the key word I heard you just use was inside.
Yes.
I mean, there's nothing that shows up in the outer world of form that does not have its causal factor within the mind and the psyche of these young people. And what I believe is that we need to go past the periphery or the veneer and find out what the causal factors are. They are always at some level psychological, at some level spiritual, in the sense of not really having a grasp of who they are in the world and how to operate in the world. So all of the outer effects are, they symbolize what's happening in, as within, so without. If we can get them to understand who they are in the world and how they are to react to the world in which they live, if we can get them to understand cosmic laws, not just social laws or economic laws, then cosmically they will know how to operate in any given situation of life. And the foundation of it is now, and always has been, quite spiritual.
Absolutely.
And we'll get an opportunity to talk more deeply about that.
You know, there's been some studies lately also on the spiritual note about a concept called cellular memory.
Yes, yes.
Where African Americans are actually experiencing still some post-traumatic stress syndrome from slavery and the abuse that occurred in slavery, that DNA memory is actually passed on. So that is what we are acting out now. So, and there are ways, there are actually healing modalities that will allow you to access that memory so that you can diffuse that memory. So that's something that I think, along with some of these other great things that you're doing at B.A.M, would do. Do you find that it's like I read the success of B.A.M. and some of the things that you're doing over there, and a lot of that seems to also come with just a lot of attention and love and guidance and an open heart and list, you know, that stuff. How do you do that? How did you get that to work?
You know, to kind of draw two things from what you all pulled. You know, when I heard you talk about these moments and how the stressors over time create these moments of violence, and then to kind of tie that to your piece about identity, B.A.M. really works around self-regulation, emotional self-regulation. So a lot of our young men come in at a point where they're looking for an older role model or father figure, you know, because oftentimes these young men don't have that directly accessible to them. So that in itself is another stressor, you know, in addition to poverty, in addition to, you know, possibly abusive home situations, abusive neighborhood situations. So all of these things create a sense of anxiety, negative emotional energy. And so without the presence of someone to show them how to cope with those things,
That's right.
you know, we always see negative antisocial behaviors. So when we work with a group of young men as a B.A.M. counselor, one piece is to help them to understand that their identity is not to be dictated by what they see in the music videos and in popular culture, but to really strive for a deeper understanding of their manhood. And with that comes the understanding of accountability, positive anger expression, the values that we teach, which are really character traits that these young men need to have, so that when they come into positions where there's a difficult interaction or a conflict in a relationship, their habit is to not pull the trigger instead of pulling the trigger or acting out.
So when they pull the trigger, they actually destroy two sets of families.
Wow.
They destroy their family, and then they destroy the family of the person that was the object of their anger. So you're not just destroying that person that you shoot. There's a whole family structure behind that. So you take because there is not a mother, whether the mother is rich, poor, whether they're educated or not educated. There's not a mother in this world that teaches their child that it's okay to take another's life. So then the mother has to deal with that. The fact that either their son's life was taken or their son took another life. And that is incredibly difficult to get through. So
it is.
How do you teach that part so that the young men can understand? When I grew up, there was a saying in my house, don't do anything to embarrass the family, and don't do anything to cause pain for the family. So I knew, and I had a temper to manage. So I knew I'd better manage that temper because it would embarrass the family or bring harm on the family. So how do you teach that now? And what happened to that?
Let me try to speak to that issue. You mentioned family on two levels. When one kills another, it affects the family of the one that died and also the one that pulled the trigger. But in a larger sense, we need to think in terms of the human family. And I think what is missing is our sense of being a part of this whole thing called Earth, this whole thing called humanity. And we have, unfortunately, through certain survival feelings within ourselves and sequestering ourselves based upon my last name is this and your last name is that, and I belong to this family and you belong to that family, and I'm in this community and you're in that community. If we ever got to the point of thinking of the world community, or the earth community, in which nothing that you do to anyone on the planet does not also affect everyone.
But it does.
And
everything
it does.
you do, what we're doing right now affects people across the world.
Absolutely.
And this
because
does.
energy is connected.
Yeah.
We've got a caller on the phone. Hi, Rose. How are you doing tonight? Ooh, turn your TV down just a little bit.
Am I supposed to speak?
Yes, you are. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I am quite emotionally involved with the situation of violence in our communities at this point. And by the way, I have worked with young male and female group members, I'll say, rather than gangs, including the father of the young lady there back in the early 60s. So I worked with the grandparents, great-grandparents, and parents of the current young people, and even probably some of these older people who are shooting up and down the street and killing innocent people. One of the things that concerns me is that you have not reached out to people like myself who can bring the generational factor into what is happening. You're talking about the developmental side of it, and certainly it has become, I don't know whether any of you would agree with me or not, a sort of cultural thing. Because many of the people who are doing these things now, and by the way, I get upset every time you all have a parade, because that is not solving or bringing attention to anything. It is a repetitive thing that is a non-entity. But the thing is that you got to understand where forth people have come from in order to understand what is impacting their psychosocial, their antisocial, as one of you just talked about, and their sociopathic, say, really diagnosis at this point, because that's where they are. Number one, people like you are very good with working with people, but it takes money. And of course,
I'm glad you
not willing.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and I want to pause right here on the money. The one thing, B.A.M, talk about your funding and how it came about. The B.A.M was actually funded.
Well, first of all, we were just so excited to be a part of a research study through the University of Chicago Crime Lab, 2009, that expanded the program from the one B.A.M counselor and founder, Anthony DiVittorio, across the city to several B.A.M programs. This past year, we've had endorsements from the mayor's office, who's graciously come out to a B.A.M group, sat into one of the B.A.M groups, and then alerted the president about the B.A.M group, who then came in and sat within the B.A.M group at Hyde Park, my group of guys, for about an hour, talking with those guys about the struggle with manhood and kind of relating his life to theirs. Yeah. So we've been able to garner a certain amount of support in the last couple of months. So we're really excited. The mayor wants to expand the program to serve a much larger audience, a much larger population in the city, and it's a part of his anti-gun violence initiative. So we're very excited, and we're looking forward to getting to work.
Now, because I am a metaphysician, there is one thing that I sort of agree with, but kind of take issue with a little bit. Everything costs money. We know that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But what things really cost first is someone's commitment to doing what they can do with what they have. The money only comes, and I don't care what you're trying to manifest. The money only comes after you have created a demand for it. That's in everything. And we all have something incredibly important that we can give. I always say, if there's a problem that's near and dear to our heart, and gun violence is no different. Okay? You don't have to go out to the neighborhood to solve the problem. You have kids in your house.
Say that.
Okay? Save your own kids. Okay? And if you don't have any children, you've got nieces and nephews. Reach out to them. And if you don't have nieces and nephews, you got neighbors. Reach out to them. And if you don't have any neighbors, then go to church and reach out to those people. But there are things that we can do as a group of people that we're not doing because we're waiting for some dollar bill to save us. Or we're waiting for some big group of people who are never going to come because there's, I don't know about you all, but there's like no Santa Claus, no Easter Bunny. there's no knight in shining armor, there's no Prince Charming.
That's right.
We are going to save ourselves.
That's it.
So what do we do to save ourselves with what we have right now? Because we are not going to wake up in the morning richer. But we're still going to have this problem. And I've got an audience filled with people who have been victims of gun violence, who have lost loved ones to a senseless act of violence. And children that they never got a chance to see grow up. Children that they're never going to ever be able to experience being grandparents or aunts or uncles. And who knows, that
That's
child could
devastating.
have been the one who had the cure for cancer or who had the cure for homelessness or whatever. So what do we do right now with what we have? We can't wait for money, and we can't wait for people to save us.
You know what, Stephanie, that's so amazing that you mentioned it and you worded it in a way that is so lame in layman's terms that it's very simple. A couple of months ago, Diane Sawyer came to Chicago and we had a panel discussion, and one of the things that I got up and I said was that, which I think Diane Sawyer is very talented, gets the information out that we need, and I said, quote unquote, we don't need Diane Sawyer to come in to solve our problems, which we have it's a wonderful blessing that he's had an opportunity to have a program that the mayor is looking at, has looked at, the president as well, studies that we have gotten with ceasefire, with the wonderful outpour of donations, as well as with the Reverend and the ministry that he has. The monies that we have, if we will put it together, just the small monies that we put together, it will solve. And if we come out, we can't be afraid of that pink, purple, orange elephant that wears 95 million tons that sits on our chest of this violence issue. We have to come out as a community. We see mothers here. I see broken hearts here. We see mothers that have lost their loved ones, that have not had an opportunity to express the love that they have for their mother because they died at an early age. So if we come out as a community and say, just like with the Facebook and the Twitter and all that, we say, look, we're going to be at this block at this time, and we're not calling nobody names and nothing like, but we're calling back our blocks and cities and what we will not tolerate. That's how it was done when we were growing up. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. The spirituality aspect is totally out of it. I'm not saying pray on the corner and pray. I'm saying for us as members that are mortgage owners, that we have stock in our community to say, look, we're not going to take this anymore. My grandmother said to me, whatever problem, there is a solution. My great-grandmother and my grandmother always used to say to me, I'm a Muslim. My grandmother's a diehard Lutheran. My great-grandmother was a Church of God in Christ. But they used to tell me every day, I love you and I will pray for you. Putting it in subliminally. If God don't give it to us, we won't get it. So therefore, now what the path that I chose was my path that I chose. But I always remembered, as the brother said, when you come back to it, I always remembered each time that I should have been dead and I woke up somewhere else, I knew that that was the prayers that Grandma Jessie Mama did pray for me.
Somebody prayed.
So therefore, I needed to get my life in order, and we need to come together as a community. You have a multifaceted community here, and we can start right now with you saying, okay, fine. On your days off, we can go down to Inglewood, Rosen, Woodline,
Yeah.
Humble Park, West Lawndale, North Lawndale. We can do K-Town. We can Terratown. We can go and we can be there, and we can talk to those young guys.
And there's so many different ways people can get involved. You know, I've met a lot of families who've lost people to gun violence, and one of the things that I know is that we as a city are affected, and we all feel the effects.
Yes, we do.
You know, and so one of the misconceptions I hope we can clear up is that, you know,
we're numb.
We're numb. We're standing idly by, and you know, it's just this thing. There are so many people who care about this issue. So many people who are affected, and so I think the one thing we can always do is, you know, instead of saying someone needs to do something about this, I'm going to do something. Whether it be
we are the someone.
Right. We are the change we're looking for.
Yes,
we've
we
been
are.
waiting for.
We are the someone.
Chicago's the trendsetter.
Right.
Of everything that happens in the world. We're the trendsetters in dressing and dancing and jewelry and
we're the hub.
Education.
We are the hub in
education. Everything. We're the trendsetters, and we are the somebodies that can start, because the young guys and girls that I deal with, Stephanie, they are on defense. They're not killers. They're not going to wake up in the morning and say, well, I think I'm going to kill somebody today. It's in their mind, it's either killed or be killed. So let me make sure that I'm a step ahead of the game. They don't want to pull the trigger. That's why it's so important at Ceasefire, as me being a violence interrupter and have outreach workers and a lot of organizations to aid and assist as far as resources, that we get those young guys and girls before they cross the line of law enforcement, before they end up with a felony and cannot work a job. One thing that I can say is that there's been an apprentice job opening up for CTA. Young guys and girls with felonies can go through this apprenticeship.
They sure can.
And they can get jobs at
They can
CTA.
get jobs at CTA.
That's a
So
beautiful
that
thing.
means that, and it's because we advocate for, there's not a bad kid.
That's not a bad
They
kid.
do
No,
bad things and make bad choices
Bad
and
decisions, yes.
based upon what they feel is just in this box called a neighborhood.
Now, we've got another caller. Keith's
Yes.
been waiting for quite a while.
Yes.
Thank you, Keith, for being patient. How are you doing? Patience ran out.
Patience
Keith
ran
will
out.
call back. I said, sorry, Keith, we do apologize.
He'll get back on
This
the
is a
line.
very
Now,
good
parents
conversation.
at home, what can parents at home do today? Because, you know, I'm a big one on
Right.
teaching
Right.
what we can go home and do right now
What we can do.
that will help diffuse decision.
Okay.
Hi.
I want to
Wait a
say
minute.
something.
Hold that thought.
Okay,
We're going to
he's
get
back.
Nadine. No,
Okay.
Nadine's here. Hi, Nadine. How are you doing?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening to all of you fine people.
Hi,
Good evening.
Nadine.
How are you,
Young
Nadine?
lady said, I'm about job creation. I'm not trying to keep the news media in business. All they want to do is come out when things, quote unquote, when they say are bad. They need to visit each one of our communities and talk to the real citizens, the real neighbors, and they can see a different picture, because our kids are some of the greatest there are.
Yes.
There are
Parents
assets.
are some of the greatest people there are.
Yeah.
And we need to move away from highlighting, because John's mother was a single parent, Mary's mother was a single parent. It does not matter. As long as that
And they
person
do
is
that.
given
That's right.
They do
love
that.
and respect.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
we
right.
got a school closing in every neighborhood,
right.
so they are saying. I live in a community where a school once was closed also. But we didn't do all of that.
Yes,
We worked together constantly. We went into each community and said, these are our children.
All right.
They deserve
Thank
the
you
best.
very much.
So I want to
Thank you very much. We've got to take a break with that note. And when we come back, we're going to talk about sense of community and how important sense of community is.
Oh, very
For the
important.
viewers at
Very
home,
important. Yeah.
while you are taking a break with us, I want you to answer this question. If you could do anything you wanted to do and knew it was going to be successful, what would you do? Stay put. See you in a few minutes.